Sean Madden here, also known as Dr. Dirt. So you want to get into astronomy. Brilliant idea. Wonderful idea. I had the same idea. What follows, you may not want to share with a budget-minded spouse. I had been into astronomy back in the 80s when my wife had bought me a really nice 4-inch reflector from the store called The Intelligent Child. I don't know what that said about me, but anyway, very lovingly she bought it for me for my birthday. And I saw some really neat stuff with that. The moon, the planets, and even had a chance to image Halley's Comet. So that would put it probably about 1986, I think. But very disappointing to look at Halley's Comet. But I've not done it for a while, and I just recently changed hobbies, decided to take up astronomy, start looking at the stars again. Now, what I had before was a 4-inch reflector, which was adequate, but I wanted something a little bit better. And when I looked on the web, it said the Celestron 8 SE Schmidt Cassegrain was the most popular and really the best one for a beginner to begin with. And 8 inches was twice as much as what I'd had for the 4-inch, and it was said to have brought in or be able to bring in a lot more light, which it did. It was great. Got it, ordered it, set it up, started looking at things, saw the planets, saw the moon way up close, even got a chance to film and image, the new term now, image, the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction of 2021. It was great, but that's where the problem began. I wanted to share what I saw, and for that, I needed a camera. So I had an iPhone, and I had a borrowed Nikon, which was great, but they're just not quite dedicated to astrophotography. And to get into this, you really need a dedicated astrophotography camera. And here's where the budget-mindedness goes out the window. I had gotten a fairly inexpensive camera that was great for imaging the planets, and it did a great job. Jupiter and the moon, like I said. But then, through that telescope, I saw other things like nebula. Faint clouds of dust hanging out there to be seen. But they're so faint, you need a camera that's going to lock onto them for minutes, hours, and sometimes days at a time. Don't doubt me on that one. Check with the guys. What I've seen on the web from people like Chuck and Trevor and Amy and Dylan were brilliant things. They had done the nebula, they'd even done galaxies, but they needed a special camera for that. The camera you need is one that will have a cooler on it, some kind of fan that cool down the film on it or the sensor on it, because once it starts getting hot from hours of photography, it starts throwing off electrons, and that shows up as little bright spots on your image. So you needed a camera that was dedicated to astrophotography and had a cooler on it. Well, no problem there, except it's a lot more expensive than a standard camera, especially if you want to get a quality camera enough to get some of these images you see everybody else doing. So you got that. And then you need something to power it, because that fan doesn't run all by itself. You need a power pack to go onto it. And then you need that hooked up to something that could image what you're seeing, and that takes a laptop. So you got a laptop, you got a dedicated camera with a cooling fan on it, a power pack, and then to do this right, to get really good images, you need a guide scope that will direct the camera, direct your telescope, and leave it in place for hours, like I said, days at a time. Another telescope, that attaches to your big telescope and another camera that attaches to it. Oh no, yeah. Sometimes you need to get an automatic focuser because during the night when you're filming this, temperatures change. The change in temperature causes a change in the focus. So you need an automatic focuser to hook up to your power pack, to hook up to your telescope, and get all the power running and get it all imaging and make sure it's crisp and clean the whole time. Then you need all the software for this. Fortunately, most of the software is free. It's amazing to see all these brilliant scientific minded guys out there who like to write code. They'll do it for free for you. There's a ton of really good piece of software out there that you get for free. But that all is wonderful once you get it going. But let me back up a little bit and warn you about something you need to check into when you get into this. You need to first look at the mount. I got a great telescope with a great mount, but it was an alt-azimuth mount, which is brilliant for doing planets and the moon because you don't have to track very much and very far. But to do the big objects for hours at a time, you need a mount that will track from your latitude and will track across the sky at the right rate. And for that, you need a German equatorial mount, which, by the way, surprise, surprise, costs a few bucks more than an alt-azimuth. So, and when you get that, when you start looking, look for one that will handle the size telescope you want, because there's a wide variety of mounts out there, all based on the weight they can carry and how specific you want it. And, oh, by the way, don't get one that's manually operated. Get one that's computer operated that has a database built into it so you can tell it to go directly to what you're looking for, which costs a few bucks more. All this to say, and why I gave you the warning up front, this ain't a cheap hobby if you want to do it right. So I suggest, look, get a high-paying job that lets you sleep in because you're going to be up late at night imaging this stuff. You perhaps get your wife to work a second job. Convince your children that child labor laws are antiquated and really don't pay attention to them. Go out there and get your kids, get a job. Start selling grandma's stuff that she left you. Start selling anything else you might have that's not as important as astro imaging. Because brothers and sisters, this ain't a cheap hobby, and you're going to need all this stuff. So, this is Dr. Madden, or I'm sorry, Dr. Dirt, signing off from you. Remember, what we see out there isn't by accident, and neither are you. Have a good night.